Hey guys, tonight we're wandering through an orchard that's equal parts peaceful and mildly judgmental, like your ex's cat staring at you during a breakup. Imagine dawn's first light slicing through twisted apple branches, your boots crushing frost-stiffened grass into confetti. A crow's cry slices the silence, sharp enough to make you check your pockets for missing keys. You're not here for a spa day, friend. Let's be real. If you can't tell a pruning shear from a salad fork, you're about 3 bad decisions away from becoming fertilizer. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and what's o'clock in your corner of the chaos. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Cold air nips your throat, 17 steps in, and your breath already hangs like ghostly laundry. Trees loom crooked as a politician's smile, their bark etched with scars older than your student loans. That crow's back perched high like a feathery foreman judging your pruning skills. You're half expecting it to cough up a Yelp review. 2 stars, lacks situational awareness. Blame the medieval monks for this whole pruning obsession. Those guys basically invented modern fruit growing, turned wild apple tangles into orderly rows while debating whether pears counted as fasting food. Fun fact, their cider was stronger than most modern IPAs. But here's the weird bit. Some Tudor farmers believed cutting branches during a waning moon made trees bleed bad luck. Try explaining that to a drunk orchardist with a rusty saw. Your shears snag on a thorny spur. Turns out plants fight dirty when threatened. Sap oozes over your glove, tacky as airport floor gum. Historians still argue whether Renaissance fruit sellers spritzed apples with vinegar to fake that fresh-picked glow. The answer's yes. Elizabethan grocery scams make TikTok resellers look wholesome. Rotting apples squelch underfoot, their sweetness gone fermented and feral. You spot a worm carcass mummified in a dried core, nature's version of a protein bar left in a gym bag. Wind rattles the branches, and for a heartbeat, the grove whispers in a language that predates commas. Never trust a tree that survived more winters than your great-grand's cheesecloth. That crow's stalking you now, hopping closer with the casual menace of a barista misspelling your name. You toss a shriveled crabapple its way, muttering, "Easy review, Gordon Ramsay." It cocks its head, unimpressed. Legend says some crows are reincarnated orchard keepers, eternally salty about subpar harvests. Congrats, you've got a feathered middle manager micromanaging your every snip. Golden light spills through the canopy now, turns spider webs into abandoned disco balls. Your thumb finds a groove in the shear, handles worn smooth by decades of keeper's grip. Feels like shaking hands with ghosts. 17th century gardeners buried their tools in winter, believed metal rested like wine. You're pretty sure your shears just need WD-40 and therapy. 3 rows done, 97 to go. The horizon glows burnt orange, same shade as your last desperate concealer purchase. Somewhere, a squirrel's lecturing its kin about your questionable life choices. You glance at the crow, now it's miming a nap. Rude, blade meets wood in a clean crunch, the sound of potential redirected. Each cuts a tiny betrayal that might save the whole tree, or murder it. No pressure. Your palms smell like crushed leaves and poor decisions. That's the secret perfume of autumn, part hope, part last-ditch effort. Something crumbles under your heel, a clay pot shard poking through leaves. Maybe colonial cider storage, or someone's failed attempt at avant-garde flower pots. Either way, it's older than the concept of personal space. You pocket it, free gilt souvenir. Shadows shrink as the sun claws higher. Your canteen's down to tepid dregs, tasting vaguely of tin and regret. Should have brought that fancy kombucha, but here you are, hydrating like a Victorian peasant. At least the crow's finally quiet. Small mercies. A branch snaps under your weight, karma for skipping leg day. The ground rushes up, but roots cushion your fall like a grudging grandmother. Lying there, eye level with a beetle dragging a pollen chunk twice its size, you feel a weird kinship. Both of you just out here schlepping stuff, praying it matters. The crow screeches, either a warning or a laugh. Maybe both. You roll upright, brushing leaf mulch from your hair. Little victories. Blades flash in the climbing light. Each reflection winks like it's in on a secret. The orchard breathes around you, decay, and renewal tangoing in the dirt. You take the next step. You unroll the oilcloth bundle across frosted grass. Its creases hold yesterday's sweat and linseed musk. Leather gloves groan as you flex them awake, stiffened pulp from autumn's first apple pressing, still crusting the cuffs. The shears glint like an actor, taking center stage, well rehearsed, but hungry for applause. Your thumb finds the rust spot near the pivot, that stubborn patch Napoleon's troops might have scrubbed from their own blades. Roman legionnaires carried bronze hooks that evolved into these blades. Medieval monks kept the designs alive through glowing manuscripts. You test the edge against a pencil-thin branch. The snap echoes louder than expected. A blackbird startles from the hedgerow, its indignant chirp forgiving your intrusion. The whetstone slips from its woolen pouch. 37 strokes, a number learned from a bow-legged gardener who swore it balanced mercy and bite. Steel whispers over stone, 1 revolution per exhale, until the edge could split a raindrop. Victorian head gardener Algernon P. Twigsworth once claimed singing opera to your shears made cleaner cuts. You hum half a bar of Greensleeves. The blade nicks your palm. Lesson learned tools prefer silence. Morning light spills through the persimmon tree, its branches casting jagged shadows over your work table. You adjust the pruning saw's tension until it vibrates at middle C. Harmony trumps brute force. What works for orchestras works for orchards. Fossil records show Neolithic farmers used flint tools to shape wild plums. Historians still argue whether the first pruning hooks mimicked wolf teeth or beetle jaws. A spider evacuates its gossamer condor from the tool handle. You relocate architect and web to a hawthorn bush, rent-free accommodations with better sightlines. The shears feel lighter now, partner instead of adversary. You sever a water sprout from the Baldwin apple tree, its vigor misplaced, its growth too hungry. Sap beads like molten topaz around the wound. Pine resin, swiped from your apron pocket, seals the cut. 19th century nurserymen would charged 6 pence for this graft. Today it's just survival math. The crow returns, a featherless twig clamped in its beak. You offer a compromise, 3 worm-riddled cuttings for today's piece. It cocks its head, bartering instincts sharpened by generations of farmyard negotiations. Blisters begin their slow bloom across your knuckles, tiny trophies from the morning's labor. You wipe steel on your sleeve, leaving smears that'll baffle tomorrow's laundress. By noon, the tool roll lies empty, each implement earning its fatigue. The crow departs with its grafted twig. You swear it winks before vanishing past the cider press. The crow's shadow dissolves into the cider-scented haze. You turn to face the gnarled pear tree. Its split trunk oozes resin where storms tore through 60 winters past, sticky trails, catching dust and sunlight like amber hourglasses. Egyptians once used such sap to preserve pharaohs. Modern arborists mix it with beeswax for graft bandages. You press a fingertip to the wound. It resists, then yields like warm candle wax. A breeze stirs dead leaves at your feet, their rustle fragments into whispers. That gale of 47 tore my crown clean off, put 3 villages in the dark for a week. The voice isn't heard so much as felt vibrations traveling up through roots into your souls. Medieval sailors swore listening to pine resin could cure toothache. They'd hold vials to their jaws while the mast creaked sad sea shanties. You trace a spiral scar on the trunk, left by a lightning strike your grandfather, documented in smudged farm ledgers. Burns smelled like heaven's forge. Smoke carried the names of every storm that ever spared us. Historians still argue whether druid tree carvings were prayers or pruning guides. Your shears hover where twin branches compete, one thick with lichen, the other straining toward neighborly shade. Knife ears. Your uncle called these parasitic shoots, stealing light without bearing fruit. The term made you picture elven bandits as a child now. It just tastes like wasted effort. You snap the weaker limb, its crack echoing through the orchard's ribcage. Resin beads well up, translucent marbles, holding suspended galaxies of pollen and grit. A gust sweeps through, carrying the scent of honey and rust. Branches creak overhead, their friction moans resolving into words. That blight of '89 started as whispers in the cherry grove, took 14 pairs and my best graft. You count 19 heartbeats before the next utterance, timed like a monk's meditative breath. A beetle spirals up your sleeve, its carapace gleaming like oil on water. You ferry it to safer bark, its antennae tapping gratitude against the blade. 17th century gardeners believed insects carried messages between trees, an idea that earned more than one herbalist a witch's pyre. The notion lingers as you study sap patterns, dried rivulets forming maps of droughts survived. The spared branch arcs westward, its shadow now kissing the cider presses weathered planks. Your shears find a swollen node, a failed graft from your first season. Tried to marry pair to quince here, sang to them like your fool manual said. The resin here smells sharper, vinegar, and burnt sugar mingling in your sinuses. You pare the lump away, revealing smooth wood beneath. A drops falls, plinking into last night's rainwater pooled in a knothole. 18 concentric ripples shimmer. You swear they rearrange into runes before dissolving. Victorian spiritualists bottled oracle sap, sold it to widows wanting one last chat with oak-bound husbands. The tree sighs, a subsonic hum, rattling your molars. Tell the apricot I'm sorry, roots crossed where they shouldn't. Took more than my share after the thaw. You pat the trunk, gloves sticking briefly, and leave a dried fig wedged in the crook. Twilight softens the orchard's edges, blurring cuts into continuations. Sap hardens on your cufflinks, impossible to remove without boiling water and regret. You hum that aborted bar of greensleeves again. The shears stay silent this time. One last drop quivers on the pruning blade, holding captive a perfect reflection of the rising moon. You flick it onto the compost heap, a fallen star swallowed by peels and wormholes. The beetle clicks twice from its new perch, whether in protest or approval. You'll never know. The beetle's clicks fade into the orchard's hum. Your wrist brushes bark and comes away gleaming. Amber sap clings like molten jewelry, each bead a prison for dust motes and daylight. 17th century perfumers steeped apple blossoms in fat to capture their scent, a trick still used in candle shops near Versailles. You inhale decay's champagne fizz, overripe fruit fermenting where it fell. A crushed apple bleeds into your boot tread, its bruises map last week's hailstorm. You kneel, palms pressing cool earth, and catch a whiff of wet wool. Some claim Roman legions marched with crab apples in their packs, sour flesh staving off thirst. Skeptics counter that the seeds would have choked their horses. Histories, debates often hinge on logistics. Wind flips a leaf, revealing aphids marching in formation. Their trail vanishes under your glove, nature's ink erased mid-sentence. Farmers once tied bacon to trees, believing grease repelled climbing insects. The method worked until raccoons learned the menu. Your shears bite a sucker branch, sap wells up, thick and possessive. It webs between your fingers, sticky as a love-struck teen's valentine. Historians still argue whether medieval topiaries were art or accident. You've seen ivy choke a yew into something blasphemous. A lone wasp investigates your collar. Its buzz syncs with the shear's rasp. You freeze, childhood stings echoing in your pulse. The drone shifts into a drinking song's slurred melody. Coincidence, or cider fumes warping the air? Rotting apples carpet the ground, their flesh collapsing into sweet surrender. One resists, its skin taut, until your thumb breaches the surface. Juice purls at the wound, a honeyed drop begging for a tongue. You let it fall. 8 seconds pass before ants swarm the offering. Peeling sap strings from your wrist, you recall Venetian glassblowers using resin to trap gold leaf. Their baubles shattered less than your composure when losing a graft. The stickiness lingers, nature's glitter, impossible to fully scrub away. 3 apples bob in a rain barrel, their reflections warped by water beetles. They'll taste of wood smoke and regret by week's end. You fish them out anyway. A nursery rhyme surfaces rotten core, sailor's lore. Count the pips and lock the door. Meaningless, yet your lips shape the words. Sun warms a spiderweb strung between branches. Dew transforms it into a necklace of lenses. Each droplet holds a miniature orchard, your distorted face repeating to infinity. Optical physics in arachnid architecture, either genius or happy accident. Your boot scuffs a mossy stone, the date 1893 gleaming through green fuzz. The year Rockefeller's scientists hybridized the first storage apple, winter's cellar guardians. This tree predates that hunger its fruit meant for immediate surrender. Shears slip, nicking your thumb. Blood beads bright against amber, nature's collaboration in crimson and gold. Civil War surgeons used apple poultices to treat foot rot, the acids possibly worse than the cure. Twilight softens the orchard's edges, shadows pooling like spilled ink. You press a palm to the pear tree, sap sealing your prints to its skin. Tomorrow's problem, tonight's silent souvenir. The last apple falls as you turn its impact, a wet period on the day's page. Somewhere, a barrel of cider exhales, its bubbles rising through twilight like backward rain. The cider's dying bubbles still dance behind your eyes when wings cut the air, a shadow stitched with iridescence. Black feathers catch the fading light, all slick blues rippling as the crow cocks its head. You freeze, shears dangling mid-snip, as it hops toward the aphid-clotted branch at your feet. 17th century London paid bounties for crow corpses, a penny per beak to thin their thieving ranks. Cities drowned in smoke from pyres of black feathers, the air choked with misplaced vengeance. Your glove creaks, reaching too slow. The bird seizes the infested twig with a guttural craw, its prize gripped like a smuggler's loot. Aphids rain onto dry leaves, a speckled blizzard for the ants below. Some say crows hold funerals, gathering to caw over fallen brethren. You've seen them mob dead raccoons. But whether it's mourning or morbid curiosity, who knows? The crow retreats to a low bough, twig trapped under one claw. It peers at you, left eye reflecting the orchard like a warped, stained glass window. Ptolemaic scribes claimed crows could read weather patterns, their flight paths guiding Nile-bound aboard ships. You're skeptical. This one just dropped a moth-eaten walnut on your shed roof last Tuesday. Wind stirs the stolen branch, aphid husks spiral toward your boot. The bird tilts its head, obsidian stare, unblinking. Your grandmother swore they recognized faces, hold grudges for generations. You offer a half smile, just in case. Claws scritch against bark as it shifts weight, assessing. Farmers once nailed dead crows to barn doors, superstition's scarecrow. The birds retaliated by stealing twice as many seeds, a lesson in unintended consequences. You stay still, breath fogging the shrinking distance between you. The crow snaps the twig, splinters flecking its coal-black beak. It tears at desiccated leaves, showering the ground with insect corpses. A single aphid clings to its talon, a wriggling emerald against onyx. The bird shakes its foot violently. The tiny survivor catapults into your sleeve. You flick the pest away, nails brushing feathers softer than expected. The crow startles, but doesn't flee. Its throat feathers puff, a muted purr resonating beneath the rustle of wings. Animal trainers in Victorian menageries taught crows to pick pockets, visitors paid to be robbed by educated ruffians. You pat your pockets anyway, outdated instinct. Dusk thickens, the bird becomes silhouette and sound. Its beak clicks, deliberate as a locksmith's tools. Historians still argue whether medieval plague doctors modeled their masks after crow faces, the hooked nose, the unreadable eyes. You blink for a heartbeat. The beak seems leather-clad, a memory of pestilence and improvised cures. The crow leaps skyward, twig clutched tight. Wind riffles its wingtips, each feather a midnight brushstroke on the indigo air. It circles once 2/3 of lazy revolutions before vanishing beyond the pear trees. A distant craw echoes, part laugh, part challenge. Your boots crunch toward the next row ahead. The stolen branch lies stripped bare. Beetles swarm the remains, their carapaces gleaming like shrapnel. You count 37 aphid bodies, tiny casualties of the crow's hygiene crusade. Someone should tell them wars aren't won through dry cleaning. Moonlight fingers through branches. Your shadow stretches into something primordial. The shears' rhythmic snick becomes a metronome, keeping time with the orchard's slowing breath. Crows roost now, their silence more unnerving than any racket. You hum to fill the void, a tune wavering like candle smoke. Ants discover the aphid graveyard, a caravan of greed marching single file. Their pearlescent bodies bend under plundered eggs, nature's looters operating in plain sight. You sprinkle wood ash across their path, an old gardener's trick. The line fractures, soldiers bumping heads like confused theater-goers at intermission. High above, wings beat the humid air. The crow returns, empty-taloned. It lands on the compost gate, rusty hinge harmonizing with its raspy caw. You toss a wrinkled apple its way, rolled too hard. The fruit ricochets off a stump, earning a derisive head tilt. Tough critic, you mutter, wiping sap on your trousers. The bird fluffs its feathers, a shiver rippling from crest to tail. Cold seeps into your knees, you rise, joints popping like greenwood in fire. The crow watches you retreat, gate creaking beneath its weight. Tools clank in your satchel, a metallic counterpoint to its gurgling clicks. It's said they collect shiny things, but this one covets decay and blight. Maybe it's a connoisseur of ruin, a feathered philosopher judging your pruning choices. Stars prick through the gloaming. You glance back. The gate swings empty, only wind gnawing at its chain. Somewhere, a treetop rustles, the crow's silhouette blotting out a cluster of newborn stars. Your thumb finds the fresh nick from earlier, blood long dried to a rust-colored whisper. The orchard holds its breath, waiting to see who'll break the silence first. Kneeling plants your kneecaps in damp earth. The cold seeps through patched denim. Palms press flat beneath the soil's skin. Vibrations hum like a subway under city streets. Archaeologists found Roman vineyards planted over mycelial networks. Farmers unknowingly harnessing fungi to nourish grapes. You wonder if these roots remember hands that came before, calloused palms from decades lost to blight and frost. 3 moss-cushioned stones jut nearby, their edges melted by rain and lichen. Fingertips brush the first marker, letters worn to ghostly grooves. Elia's, maybe, or Elise. The second, stone's date, 1983, makes you pause. Saplings planted the year return of the Jedi hit theaters, a time when these gnarled branches were twigs, nursing Star Wars daydreams. Damp woodrot smell mixes with memory, grandfather teaching you to count growth rings. Trees lie about their age. He'd wink, sawdust clinging to his suspenders. You trace a root sprawling from the oldest marker, its surface rippled like a brain scan. Some dendrologists swear roots transmit distress signals through underground fungal wires. A vegetable internet trading secrets about droughts and deer piss. Your nail digs at a rusted wire, hugging the trunk, a forgotten support, now strangling bark. Metal flakes away, revealing scar tissue swelling around the noose. 17th century peasants buried iron nails in apple trees. Superstition said it sweetened fruit. These days we just graft, less tetanus, same sugar rush. Wind combs through high leaves, a sound like pages flipping in God's library. You press your forehead to the trunk, rough bark imprints a temporary tattoo. Beneath your ear, sap thrums slow and syrupy as a standby heart. Historians still argue whether Neolithic tribes carved prayers into birch bark or just really early graffiti. Either way, the trees outlasted the artists. Ants stream over your boot, teenagers late for a rave. Their antennae brush the air. You're just another landscape hiccup. The third stone hides under ivy, green blanket pulled up to its chin. Peeling vines reveals a weathered age, the rest stolen by erosion. Maybe it stood for Harold or Hestia, or here lies the guy who forgot his pruning shears. Soil crumbles under your grip, a crumbling beneath bronze of earthworms and quartz. Your pinky hooks a root hair, fine as a spider's barbered mustache. It twitches, or was that the wind? Farmers in the 30s swore they heard corn grow, whispering thirst through cellulose throats. You hold your breath, ears tuned to the static between heartbeats. Something pulses below, a bass note, felt more than heard. Spring thaws groundwater, mycelial gossip. Your spine straightens, frost-heaved cobblestones of vertebrae cracking in protest. Above, a woodpecker hammers Morse code, the tree's ribs transmitting messages you'll never decrypt. Shadows stretch, noon deepens, to afternoon's amber syrup. You chip lichen from the markers, green flakes clinging to cuticles like scales. Someone once loved these trees enough to chisel permanence into rock. Now their names are food for snails, mollusk teeth grinding stone into soil. Season by season, a root nudges your heel sly as a cat begging scraps. You shift weight, mud squelching a wet complaint. The orchard's veins press upward, demanding witness to what endures. 30 years turned saplings into sentinels, guardians of departed hands, and Hollywood sequels. Sun warms your nape, the ancient dance of light and chlorophyll. You scoop soil over an exposed root collar, tucking it in like a child. Your palm lingers, dirt cold and alive. Somewhere beneath, fungi splice the dead with the living, the original social network. No password required. Boots squelch when you rise, the earth reluctant to release you. 3 stones stand sentinel, their stories sinking deeper each rainfall. Maybe in 3023, a dirt-caked thumb will brush a shard of your phone, puzzling over why ancestors worshipped glowing glass. The trees, though they'll remember, they always do. Midday heat pools in your collar, a wet jewel against your neck. Bees lumber past, their pollen sacs, fat as golden cargo pants. Historians note ancient keepers timed pruning by honeybee flights, matching blade work to pollinators' drowsy noon orbits. You swipe sweat with a shoulder, the motion scattering aphids fleeing your shadow. Sunlight bleaches the eastern rose, their branches stripped to bone-white scaffolds. Your shears find a shaded bough, leaves starved of light, despite their stubborn green. Pompeian frescoes show similar limbs, propped with forked sticks, Roman orchardists battling gravity centuries before Newton named it. The cut oozes slow, sap glazing steel like adulterated amber. A bee lands on your wrist, hairs bristling as it samples salt. You freeze, aware this is how people end up in YouTube fail compilations. Its proboscis flicks twice, deciding you're not worth the sting. Beekeepers in Sichuan once used human breath to calm hives. 19th century smoker substitutes for the underequipped. Shade stretches its fingers westward. You pivot to follow, boots tacky with resin. The severed branch leaks a melody, drips hitting dry soil in A-flat plinks. Someone should bottle that as orchard rain, market it to insomniacs and overthinkers. Your canteen sloshes, last sip tepid enough to steep mediocre tea. Bark flakes under your grip, each layer a parchment scrap. Peasants during the Little Ice Age wrapped trees in sheepskins, desperate mittens for shivering saplings. You peel a curl of dead wood, its underside veined with termite hieroglyphics. The branch's core reveals concentric circles, a bullseye for carpenter ants. Cutting here feels different, like editing someone else's diary. 17 beetle larvae spill into your palm, their bodies jade beads rolled in sawdust. You deposit them on a sun-warmed stone. Let entropy decide their fate. Heat warps the air above the compost heap, a mirage of steam and possibility. Your glove snags on a thornless blackberry cane, its thorns filed smooth by generations of deer teeth. Science insists herbivores avoid prickle-free plants. Yet here's the evidence. Mocking botanical journals since 1974, a gust riffles the hayfield. Beyond the fence, waves of gold, syncopated by crickets. Your shears bite a water sprout, its rebellion against the trunk's tyranny. Dutch elm breeders in the 1600s trained trees like bonsai soldiers, twisting limbs into arboreal arnhem. Sweat beads run reconnaissance down your spine, each drop mapping new territories. The cut branch smells green bitter, a scent that colonizes sinuses and memory. Grandmother's kitchen windowsill basil fighting for space with geraniums and regrets. 3 apples rot nearby, their split skins hosting wasp conventions. You skewer one with the shears tip, tossing it into the brambles. Historians still argue whether medieval nobles actually ate rotting fruit or just enjoyed watching peasants gag. Either way, fermentation was the era's true crown jewel. Your hat brim sags, a defeated umbrella against Apollo's sea. Back in the shade, you catalog blisters rising between knuckles 8, uneven as a toddler's crayon stars. That guy who holds the beard of bees' world record, 12 pounds of insects on his face, haunts your mind. Maybe heat strokes setting in. The tree casts a leopard print shadow, light through leaves, dappling your arms. You crouch to inspect graft lines, ridged scars from arranged marriages between rootstock and dreamers. Someone once tried splicing peaches onto this crabapple, a horticultural Hail Mary that died mid-prayer. Fingertips brush a sun-warmed knot, the tree's relic of a lost limb. 20th century sawmills paid extra for such burls, their swirls prized by dashboard craftsmen. You leave it intact. Let the next generation wonder at its whorls. A ladybird traverses your sickle, 6 legs, navigating the steel Serengeti. Its shell winks red, a dropped holiday ornament in July's monochrome. Farmers once released millions to battle aphids, tiny mercenaries in the pesticide wars. Shadows elongate, the sun's retreat measured in fingernail widths. You wipe blades on oilcloth, a quick baptism before the next row. Somewhere north, a tractor coughs, its rhythm syncopated by your shears, metallic sighs. The pruned bough lies skeletal, its leaves already curling into fetal commas. Tomorrow's problem chopping it into kindling without summoning more blisters. For now, it's enough to stand spine popping like a cork from nature's wine bottle, beassemble homeward, their leg sacks deflated, shifts ending. You mimic their route, trudging westward towards shade that no longer stings. The orchard hums behind you, a hymn older than mittened trees or bartered bees. Your shadow leads the way, stretching 83 sleepy steps toward the tool shed's rusting hug. You pause where sunlight slants through a skeletal branch, its deadwood jeweled with stubborn petals. They cling like bridal lace, salvaged from a shipwreck, white against rot's dominoes. Historians note Tudor gardeners left such blossoms intact, believing ghosts sip nectar from dormant flowers. Your shears hesitate. Does mercy live in steel or stillness? A petal brushes your cheek, cool despite the sun's last stand. Pomander balls once held crushed apple blossoms, their musk masking plagues and bad decisions. The cut comes swift. The branch fractures with a sound like snapped sugar. 17 petals spiral down, each a parachute, without a landing zone. Someone should study why deadwood blooms harder than living limbs, persistence as performance art. Archaeologists found pressed orchard petals in Egyptian tombs, tributes to gods allergic to mortal fruit. Your boot grinds a fallen blossom into clay, its veins imprinting the soil like tiny fossilized rivers. 3 petals lodge in your cuff, pale hitchhikers on denim. 18th century French perfumers distilled them into essence, due regret, a scent so mournful it was banned after 2 suicides. You snort. Modernity sells worse in plastic bottles with hashtags. Here's the moment. Brittle curls of bark cling to steel like lovers, avoiding goodbyes. A breeze plucks petals mid-fall, sending them east toward the cemetery's bee-less hives. Historians still argue whether Byzantine empresses wore ghost blossoms to mock their rivals' fading beauty. Consensus dies where evidence grows mold. The last petal lands in your palm, translucent as a forgotten resolution. You blow it toward saplings planted the year. Lisbon shook itself to rubble. Some secrets only roots remember, airborne ones just haunt the understory. Deadwood bares its throat to twilight, your shears retreat, oiled and absolved. Tomorrow's rain will dissolve petal confetti into the mud, a silent masquerade for worms. You pocket a single curl of bark, its alphabet too warped for anyone's tongue. Moonrise finds you squinting at the tool sheds, silhouette its roof, sagging under the weight of years. The ghost blossoms dance behind you, their valedictory waltz scored by a sparrow's cough. You think of Victorian seances, all that wrapping and petals falling in empty rooms. Maybe every cut's a question, answered only by what chooses to take root. Birds freeze mid-chirp, the orchard inhales. Your shears dangle like a stopped pendulum edge, catching a sunbeam fleeing west. Some monk in the 9th century documented this silence, wrote that pruning's true work happens between cuts. You wonder if he also invented the dramatic pause, or just stole credit from the trees. A groan seeps from the pear tree behind you, wood bending under memories of fruit. In medieval Normandy, farmers tied creaking branches with rags, believing sounds attracted soul-eating moths. Your gloves flex, leather answering the tree's complaint with a squeak of its own. 19 heartbeats thump in your ears, the wren's patience running thinner than last year's cider. Wind riffles through your collar, carrying the musk of a storm 3 valleys over. Your boot nudges a fallen twig, its snap echoes like a dinner bell. The wren explodes from the thicket, a brown bullet cursing in tweet. You mutter an apology. It flicks tail feathers at you like jilted royalty. Blame the Tudors. They bred birds to be this dramatic. 3 petals cling to your sleeve, Pompeii's ashes, preserved similar imprints on a baker's tunic. You flick one into the breeze. It helicopters toward the compost heap's steaming grin. Historians still argue whether Roman orchards held whispered councils at dusk, or if that's just poets getting high on fermented figs. Your shadow stretches across clover, fingers brushing a moss-crusted keystone. Someone buried an axe head here in 1892. Local lore claims it sweats rust before thunderstorms. You press a palm to the soil, cool and indifferent to excavation fantasies. The wren returns, alights on your abandoned tool roll. It cocks its head, black bead, eyes judging your blade's angle of repose. You recall a Byzantine text alleging birdsong could sharpen shears, nonsense that makes you check the edge anyway. Steel winks, the feathered critic flits off, unimpressed. A leaf spirals down, lands in your water cup like a miniature green raft. 18th century herbalists steeped such autumn arrivals in brandy, promising visions of future lovers. You fish it out, dab the dampness behind your ears anyway. Old habits die tacky. The pear tree groans again, a deeper, timber-shivering note. You press your brow to its trunk, feel vibrations humming through lichen. Maybe it's complaining about your cuts, maybe singing to the apples across the path. Tree gossip stays encrypted in sap. 3 crows convene on the fence, feathered magistrates here to review your work. You snap the shears shut. Their click sends the tribunal skyward in a flurry of objections. Smart-ass dinosaurs, they'll be back when you start turning earth for bulbs. Your canteen gurgles, last swallow of water tastes like tin and pine resin. Victorian gardeners believed midnight sips from iron vessels strengthened the voice for commanding roses. All you've got is a hoarse chuckle. The roses here haven't taken orders since Reagan. Light bleeds gold at the edges, the kind that makes even dandelions look profound. You wipe sap onto your jeans. It hardens into a translucent scar. Centuries from now, someone might find the stain and call it art, proof humans once touched trees without screens mediating. The wren's chastising resumes, now with backup from a jay's foghorn screech. You count 73 breaths before they warp into a lullaby Mozart might have stolen. Nature's playlist, equal parts grace and gas station, bathroom argument. Blunt shears aren't a tragedy, just an excuse to visit the whetstone's purring kiss. You picture monks filing chisels to Rachmaninoff's third, if Rachmaninoff did carpentry slam poetry. Steel meets stone, metal curls flake off like platinum dandruff. Dust motes float in a sunbeam. You swipe at them like a cat high on catnip. The orchard exhales rotten apples, fermenting near the stone wall. Release a champagne sigh. 17 paces east. Your shadow meets the compost heaps own a inkblot Rorschach of mismatched twins. Someone carved initials inside the elderberry's split trunk. JD plus MH 1934. You trace the letters, doubting John, and Martha stayed sweet past the depression. Love letters rot faster than leaves, witnessed only by trees who can't read. Dusk's first star blinks awake, Polaris winking through walnut branches. You click your shears at it, and old pruners joke about cutting through the Milky Way. The star doesn't laugh, but a bat swoops overhead, scribing its own punchline in midair. Your gloves whisper against each other, left palm stroking right fingertips. The pear tree finally stops groaning, settles into a silence that feels like forgiveness, or maybe surrender. You pocket the whetstone, promise to make it scream again tomorrow. Crickets rev their legs, nature's version of a car idling outside a 7-Eleven. You kick a pebble, it skitters into the hedge's darkest mouth. 86 years ago. That's how a fugitive's gold watch disappeared. Or so claims the drunk at the village pub. Moonlight milks the path home. Your boots kick up silvered pollen ghosts. Behind you, the orchard rearranges its bones, satisfied, for now, with the day's negotiations. Fingers hover above the split trunk, ridges of scar tissue form a frozen lightning bolt. Victorians believed such marks repelled evil spirits. They'd pin copper, pennies into the bark, for insurance. Your thumbnail traces a melted groove, splinters catch on calluses, earned from years of misguided DIY projects. The gash breathes moss, velvet tendrils spilling over charred edges. Some new age blogger in the 20s claimed lightning struck trees, channeled alien radio signals. You half expect to find a weathered antenna poking through the rot. Warmth radiates from the wound, or maybe that's just the morning sun hitting yesterday's sunburn. New shoots erupt from the fracture, pale green fingers gripping the deadwood. Historians still argue whether Celtic tree cults worshipped lightning scars or just needed an excuse to throw ragers in the woods. You snap off a brittle twig, aroma of burnt caramel assaults your nostrils. Weird flex, photosynthesis. Wind whistles through the rift, a breathy duet with your own exhale. 4 ladybugs march across the scar, information. Tiny UN peacekeepers patrolling a disputed border. You recall that Franken-Teutonic farmers once grafted apple saplings onto lightning-scarred oaks. Hybrids died screaming by August. Some experiments stay buried for good reason. Sap oozes where bark meets scar. An amber bead trembles in the crevice. You press your pinky into the gel cold, as a mortician's handshake. 17th century apothecaries sold bottled storm tears as cure-alls, guaranteed to disappoint both plague victims and hypochondriacs. The droplet clings to your skin, nature's worst sticker tattoo. A woodpecker drums nearby, its staccato code probably insulting your haircut. 3 crows perch on the damaged limb, feathered vultures waiting for the rot to ripen. You flick sap at them, it falls short, splattering a dandelion into early retirement. Bird laws a slippery slope. Your palm flat against the seam, living wood pulses against dead. The shock travels up to your elbow, a static buzz that could be biology or wishful thinking. Someone carved initials inside the wound. Long ago, JT, 43, now swollen beyond recognition by decades of growth. Love letters in Braille, only worms can read. Shadows pool, where bark curls inward, the trees blackened, maw exhales damp earth and forgotten campfires. Archaeologists found a medieval knife wedged in a similar split, owner likely fleeing from either tax collectors or bad porridge. You probe the darkness with a stick, meet only spider silk and resignation. Sunlight hits the fresh shoots. Their translucent leaves glow like stained glass in a downmarket cathedral. You snap an overeager sprout. It crackles with the indignation of youth cut short. The crows scatter squawking tabloid headlines about arboreal murder. Blade licks the trunk's edge, shaving rot, until pale wood winks beneath. Sawdust, snow gathers in your boot treads. You'll track this confession through the kitchen later. A beer bottle cap glints in the debris. 98 World Cup relic turned microbial airbimb. The scar's geometry demands obedience. Each cut follows the rift's gravitational pull. Your shears click like a metronome. 3rd grade piano lessons finally paying off. 17 strokes later, deadwood lies in a heap resembling your last relationship. Messy, but necessary. Wind riffles through the remaining shoots. Their shiver looks like gratitude or Parkinson's. You step back. The tree's profile now sports a haircut somewhere between punk rock and seminary dropout. It'll grow into itself by spring or die trying. Either way, the sermon's written in the rings. Your shears hesitate at the southern rose first tree, blade kissing a branch still heavy with unripe fruit. Humidity hugs your throat. Air turned to wet wool pressing down. Farmers once hung seaweed from barn doors when storms approached. Crunchy meteorologists predicting rain by how the kelp curled. These apples won't sweeten now. You sacrifice their future to the compost heap's hungry gullet. Sweat beads where your collar chafes. 19th century field hands would have slapped leeches here for relief. Your gloves leave rusty smears on the shears. If anyone asks, it's totally apple blood. The wind shifts, brings a metallic tang like licking a battery. Storms resume smells of ozone and fish guts. Cuts come faster. Twist and snap pirouettes honed through 6 autumns. A snapped twig releases fermented sap. Scent verite of a frat house carpet. Your boot crushes fallen leaves into confetti, nature's participation trophy for your efforts. They say it rained frogs in Wales last century. You make mental note to dodge hoppers on the walk home. Clouds bruise westward, mottled purples seeping into the horizon's pearly underbelly. Your grandmother swore chewing birch bark predicted rainfall, her false teeth clicking through folk wisdom. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants actually licked trees for weather forecasts or just enjoyed weird snacks. Either way, your tongue stays in your mouth. Branches surrender with satisfying cracks, green wood fibers weeping as you clear airflow. 3 drops hit your neck each, a cold nail driving you onward. The orchard's floor darkens, earth inhaling the promise of deluge. You kick aside a rotten log, exposing pill bugs fleeing their Titanic. Lightning flickers inside the cloud bank, a strobe light for some celestial rave. Air pressure drops, your ears pop like opening a soda can mid-flight. One-handed, you tighten the oilcloth roll on your belt. 19th century orchardists would have sacrificed a goat for this Velcro miracle. A severed branch leaks milky sap. You swipe some across your forearm, temporary war paint dissolving in the thickening mist. 18th century perfumers tried bottling storm air, ended up selling moldy water to bored aristocrats. The scent of petrichor rises, nature's curfew bell tolling. Your shears slip on a rain-slicked handle, steel bites your palm's meaty base. Blood mingles with apple juice, creating a biodynamic cocktail none would drink. 3 crows erupt from the pines, jetliners taxiing through a watercolor sky. You toss a wormy fruit at their wake. It arcs like a doomed satellite. First true raindrop hits your nose, cold as a witch's goodwill. You pivot toward the tool shed, mud already sucking at your soles. The southern row stands half pruned, its trees shrugging off your retreat. Storm or no, some branches always escape the blade. Tin roof thunder greets your arrival, rain drum rolls building to crescendo. Through the downpour, trees sway like drunken sailors, roots clinging to the sobriety of soil. You lean against splintered door jamb, watch your breath fog the glass. Lightning forks the sky, a crack in heaven's dinner plate. The crows regroup on a skeletal oak feathers, plastered into goth plumage. Rain streams down the shed's window, temporary tattoos on aging glass. Your pocket vibrates, phone alert about flash floods. But here, in the hammering rhythm, you recall something your grandfather said pruning cherries in 72. Storms don't prune trees, they baptize survivors. Shadows deepen despite the early hour, daylight chewed up by greedy clouds. You count apple bins stacked against the wall, 17 empty soldiers waiting for harvest's call. The rain's pitch rises, needles on a vinyl record skipping toward oblivion. Wind shrieks through the loose east shutter, a feral solo over the percussive rain. You find a half candle in the toolbox, light it with hands still trembling from cold. Flame wavers, casting shadows that look like fingers reaching from the walls. Through the tempest's roar, a single leaf clings to the window. It flexes, ripples, refuses to fall. You raise your shears in mock salute, blades catching candlelight. Somewhere south, behind the storm's gray curtain, an unpruned branch snaps under the weight of celestial indecision. Rainwater drips from your brows as you squat beneath the weeping canopy, knees protesting like Uno cards in a bicycle spoke. The storm left the trees glistening, each leaf trembling under residual adrenaline. Your blade glints like Roman falc's knives, those curved bronze things that hacked through vineyards and history books alike. A stubborn branch arches away from the trunk, defiant as a subway pole dancer. You twist sideways, spine curving to match the tree's unnatural angle. Muscle memory kicks in. 6 years of pruning have turned your joints into living protractors. Some Renaissance pruners whispered prayers before each cut, afraid of angering dryads in the grain. You just mutter "should-done yoga" as your hamstring twinges. The shears bite, sap oozes like liquid topaz over rust-speckled steel. Balance isn't about perfection. It's about which leans counteract each other. You leave a knotted limb that curves west. Its rebellion will anchor against prevailing winds. Historians still argue whether Roman viticulture practices increased yields or just satisfied superstitions. Either way, your cuts follow the tree's logic, not some textbook diagram. Mud slurps at your boots as you circle the trunk, Earth's clingy X refusing to let go. A surge beetle darts across your knuckles, its iridescent shell mimicking oil on water. You flick it toward a puddle, nature's disco ball, seeking better dance floors. The storm rinsed away pollen's yellow crime scene. Now even rot smells, briefly redeemable. Your shadow stretches thin across sodden grass, a Giacometti figure drawn in midnight and moss. When you tilt your head, the tree's silhouette mirrors your angled shoulders. Symmetry hides in asymmetry. It's all about which angles you squint at. A woodpecker laughs from somewhere, avian stand-up comic heckling your philosophy. Palm bark clings to your sleeve like a stubborn drunk at last call. You scrape it off with the shears, leaving a sap print resembling Florida's coastline. 3 apples survived the storm, their pockmarked skins glowing like dismissed jurors. You pocket one. Frogs and rain guy can't judge your snack choices now. Light fractures through tangled branches, a kaleidoscope painting your gloves in tiger stripes. Blades part a curtain of young shoots, revealing the heartwood's jagged smile. 18th century philosophers compared tree rings to moral growth. You're just glad this one survived termites. Sweat and rainwater blur your vision. The world becomes a wet, impressionist canvas. You wipe your face on a sleeve, scent of mildew and long-dead detergent. 2 crows land on the compost heap, their debate over worm rights echoing like a tick-tock spat. A severed twig spirals downward, helicoptering into the mud with finality. Lightning-scarred wood feels warmer under your touch. Cellular memory of celestial violence. The cut heals best when angled away from old trauma, botanical advice that works for people too. Your granddad called it giving the rot somewhere to run. Mist rises from the earth, ghostly tendrils retreating from the sun's weak glare. You step back, boots sinking into the squelching critique of your pruning choices. Eyes track the canopy's new silhouette, jagged yet harmonious. Balance is just controlled imbalance, the same way tightrope walkers partner with gravity. A breeze rifles through the remaining leaves, nature's fact-checker, verifying your work. Somewhere under the mud, roots whisper through fungal networks about the arrogant ape with shears. You snap a dead twig, its crack echoing like a punctuation mark. The orchard exhales, air thick with the relief of burdens shared. Your spine uncurves one vertebra at a time, a slinky descending stairs. 3 starlings burst from the undergrowth, a feathered jazz trio fleeing the encore. Light bleeds gold through the western trees, daylight's last stand before the shift change. Shears fold into their leather cradle blades, whispering tales of sap and sweat. You rub sap between thumb and forefinger, sticky proof of today's negotiations. Tomorrow's blisters will ask uncomfortable questions. Tonight, the trees hum a lullaby of satisfied angles. Your shadow merges with the trunk as you go keeper, and kept dissolving into dusk. Rustle leaves betray movement in the bramble shadows, their dry applause announcing an uninvited critic. You freeze mid-snip, blade hovering over a branch bent like a question mark. Amber eyes glitter between thorns, wildfire trapped in fur. Some say foxes were sacred to Dionysus, those Roman vineyard raiders who partied harder than frat bros with expired IDs. The vixen's nose twitches, sampling air seasoned with worm rot and your sweat. You dig a fist into your apron pocket lint, and a lone apple competing for space. The fruit's skin caves under your thumb, bruised earnestness offering itself as tribute. Historians still argue whether Mesopotamia's hanging gardens used fermented fruit to repel pests. Your version's simpler toss now. Avoid rabies paperwork later. Leaves crinkle as paws retreat, the apple rolling downhill like a poorly thrown bocce ball. A twig snaps, nature's mic drop, punctuating the thief's exit. You imagine her den stolen chicken bones and mismatched mittens arranged into modern art installations. 5 years back, a keeper upstate swore foxes buried apples to ferment winter cider. His blog updates stopped after the incident involving raccoons and a trampoline. Shadows stretch, their inky fingers reaching for your ankles. Blisters on your palm pulse in time with distant frog croaks, a biological metronome keeping shameful karaoke rhythms. The shears hinge squeaks, high C sharp in the orchard symphony. Some Renaissance nobles bred dwarf fruit trees in pots, flora hostages to flaunt at banquets. Your trees grow wilder, untamed by porcelain or pretension. Wind riffles your collar, carrying the apple's final destination crunch from beyond the stone wall. You pivot toward the next tree, boot sole peeling from mud like Velcro in reverse. A spider parachutes past, silk thread catching sunset like Spider-Man's bad day. 17th century orchardists believed certain spiderwebs predicted frost. They were wrong more often than weather apps. 3 crows convene on a lightning-struck limb, avian jurors judging your pruning. You flick a caterpillar toward them. Pro-B-O-N-O, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, for the defense. Their argument over the wriggling gift sounds like a bassoon quartet tuning up. Kneeling, you spot fox prints stamped in mud paw pads, perfect as maple seeds. 18th century fur traders claimed vulpine ghosts haunted clear-cut forests, mostly to justify higher pelt prices. Twilight seeps into the orchard, colors draining like a sink. With all the stoppers pulled, you unclench your jaw, realizing you've been mirroring the tree's gnarl-toothed grimace. The last cut arcs wide, it'll heal into a crescent moon for beetles to colonize. Some Mongolian nomads buried apples with corpses, snack pack for eternity's commute. You settle for composting cores in the here and now. The tool belt's weight shifts, hammer handle, digging a fresh love letter into your hip. One section remains, a crippled branch dangling by splintered threads. Blades close, the crack echoes like a poker player's final tell. Sap beads on the wound, slow tears refusing to fall. Tomorrow, ants will build highways toward the sweetness. Tonight, it's just you and the smell of stolen fruit fading into violet air. Your blade pauses mid-swing. The gnarled burl pulses like a tumor made of tree rings. Rot once threatened this trunk, its defeat recorded in woody waves that ripple under your palm. 17th century shipwrights prized such growths for their uncanny grain, carved compass roses that never warped. This one's a war diary, cellulose chronicling battles against blight and beetle. You kneel, knees popping like champagne corks for no one's celebration. Fingernails pick at the bark's contoured ridges, reading elevation lines of a forgotten campaign. Some swear Celtic tribes mapped migration routes using oak burls, organic GPS before satellites. Your tree speaks a cruder tongue, scars zigzagging like a drunk's shorthand. The shears hover balance, tipping between surgeon's cut and historian's preservation. Removing it would erase 3 decades of stubborn survival. Leaving it risks invaders using the lump as a fungal Airbnb. Rot's sour tang still lingers, ghost of a fight this trunk refuses to let go. Wind riffles through a nearby sapling, young leaves whispering naivete. You carve around the bulge, blade skating its edges like a kid, avoiding sidewalk cracks. 18th century nuns allegedly fermented burl tea to read God's fingerprints. Your own brew steeps back at the cabin, bargain brand Earl Grey, with honey stolen from the hive out back. Sawdust spirals, each curl a lost chapter drifting to the compost heap. The burl remains a keloid crown on the trunk's weathered cheek. Historians still argue whether Neolithic carvings in England's Box Hill were maps or mushroom-induced doodles. You trace the wood's ridges, finding familiar contours of the creek that snakes through your land. Twilight softens the burrow's harsh edges, night granting amnesty to daytime flaws. A beetle scouts the fresh-cut rim, antennae twitching in Morse code. You squint, half expecting tiny surrender flags planted in the sapwood. Maybe tomorrow, maybe never. The tree has earned its jagged metal. You wipe resin on your jeans, adding another stain to the constellation of past mistakes. The grove exhales its breath heavy, with damp soil and reluctant healing. Somewhere beyond the stone wall, a fox drags your discarded apple core toward realms unseen. Darkness stitches up the sky, one star at a time, as you pocket the shears and walk homeward through the patient trees. Wind plucks a strand of hair from your temple, salt and pepper silk dancing toward the treetops. You retaliate by snipping a water shoot, its green ambition snapped mid-reach. 17th century monks believed stolen hair, woven into vines, strengthened future harvests, a holy theft repaid in sacramental wine. Your own pilfering feels more honest, taking only what the tree overoffers. The shears click like a hungry mantis, each cut stealing tomorrow's growth today. You thin a cluster of embryonic apples, no larger than peas, in their leafy cradle. One falls into your palm, its skin translucent with unripe hunger. Legend says Anne Boleyn carried a similar puckered fruit when arrested, though historians still argue whether it was prophecy or prop. You lob yours into the nettle patch. Let history sort it out. Sunlight thieves between clouds, striping your neck with alternating warmth and chill. Your blade takes a crooked branch, angling toward the property line. 8 spoiled pears will never swell now, their potential rerouted into surviving siblings. Victorian gardeners whispered that stolen cuttings grew best sprouting vigor from the shock of abduction. You pocket a twig anyway, insurance against next spring's bare spots. A gust riffles your shirt, cool fingers probing the sweat patch between your shoulders. You counter by pruning a sun-starved limb, its leaves pale as forgotten laundry. The exchange feels equitable. Wind takes your scent. You take the tree's dead weight. Somewhere southward, your stolen hair tangles in a thrush's nest, lining a cradle for stolen eggs. Sap beads where you breached a young limb, the tree's version of a shrugged shoulder. Medieval winemakers called this the vine's forgiveness, a sticky absolution for necessary violence. Your own sins stick to the shears, gumming the pivot joint until you swipe them through wild mint. The scent hits like an apology. You pause as a spider rebuilds its web between 2 doomed branches. 17 strands glint before your blades part them. 7 minutes of arachnid labor undone in half a heartbeat. The spider retreats, dragging its silk like a burglar fleeing with half the loot. You leave the lowest thread intact, a tithe paid in due and mercy. Shadows lengthen the grove's living columns stretching into sly caricatures. Your shears bite a sucker shoot, sneaking up the trunk, its aspirations too greedy for this late hour. Pirate orchards once thieved genetics. This way, sly grafts stolen under moonlight to bypass plant import laws. This shoot's destiny ends in the burn pile, its DNA too common to justify smuggling. A beetle scrambles over your boot, iridescent armor gleaming like a repeat offender. You sacrifice a blighted leaf to divert it, crime prevention via produce. The bug hesitates, antennae quivering like a thief weighing risk versus reward. Commitment wins. It drags the prize into leaf litter, where 5 grubs wait beneath a rotten log. Your canteen's last gulp disappears down your throat, water hijacking the dryness. In exchange, you spare a cluster of buds huddled near the trunk. Saxon texts describe thief roots that siphoned nourishment from richer trees. Vegetable larceny punished by axe and flame. These buds get probation, 3 weeks to prove they'll bear more than excuses. Twilight arrives early, sneaking through the canopy, while the sun's distracted by the horizon. You make your final cut, a split branch that rubs its neighbor raw. The wound weeps slow sap, golden contrition under the moon's parole office gaze. As you leave, wind fingers your pockets, finding only lint and the expired guilt of borrowed time. Your shears carve minutes into wood, each cut dripping gold onto thirsty bark. Resin tracks your path like an hourglass spilled sideways, the orchard's version of punching a time card. 17 blisters swell under leather, your palms staging a mutiny against callous leadership. Roman soldiers used tree gum to seal wounds, mid-battle nature's bandage, before penicillin and whining. Yours isn't noble, just sap binding skin to sheer handles in sticky partnership. A droplet lands on your boot, amber, capturing a bubble of trapped August air. You resist prying it loose. Let future archaeologists debate whether it's sap or a prehistoric sneeze. 19th century pomologists once argued trees wept slower in moonlit hours, their journals full of midnight measurements and cider-fueled theories. Your own data's simpler daylight makes resin flow like gossip at a village well. The East Row trees ooze with theatrical flair, drama queens of the Rosaceae family. Each snip produces a gleaming bead, their version of flipping a coin into a fountain. You swipe one with your pinky. It strings golden webs between finger and blade. Medieval beekeepers wore similar resin gloves as armor, their hives jury-rigged sundials tracking stings per hour. Your protection feels less poetic, dollar store gloves leaving polyester fuzz in every wound. Branches creak as you bend, a chorus of wooden joints mirroring your own. Your thumb blazer erupts, a fluid-filled dome under the nail's half-moon. 17th century surgeons would have lanced it with a hot knitting needle, charming historical solution you'll politely decline. Instead, you press the blister against a cool trunk, letting bark siphon the burn. Tree and keeper become collaborators in minor treason against pain. 3 crows pace behind feathered auditors, tracking your progress through fallen twigs. They've learned your rhythm, the exact moment severed limbs hit dirt like edible applause. You toss a worm-riddled apple, their black wings erupt in a scuffle over the offering. One hops closer, its head cocked to study your shears with jewel thief intensity. Renaissance gardeners believed crows carried pruning secrets to rival orchards, feathered industrial spies trading vegetative intel. You click your blades, the bird retreats, but not before stealing your last fig Newton. Shadows stretch their legs, dusk pooling in the hollows between trees. Resin hardens on your cuff, a brittle bracelet clinking with every cut. Archaeologists found similar deposits on Stone Age tools, proof our ancestors also stole napkins from nature. Your contributions will be less poetic. Future grad students scrubbing sap off second-hand shears at garage sales. The final tree greets you with a sap-free cut, its dry wound almost an insult. You press the blade deeper, a gambit, rewarded by a single reluctant tear. Satisfaction sours when you spot the splinter wedged under your thumbnail, nature's mic drop. Ottoman gardeners reportedly filed lawsuits against trees for similar injuries. The legal system's most whimsical docket, you settle for a muttered curse, the kind that would have gotten your tongue nailed to a market board in 1623. Stars prick through the canopy as you roll oilcloth around protesting tools. Your hands throb in time with the spring peepers, a biological metronome tracking the damage. Historians still argue whether resin slowed healing or just made medieval bandages glitter, academic quibbling over crusted suffering. You pour well water over your palms, the shock numbing blisters into temporary submission. The orchard exhales behind you, a breeze carrying the musk of cut wood and resolved arguments. Resin glows on branches like abandoned sundial marks. Tomorrow's problem, next year's amber argument. Your boots crunch homeward, each step squeezing fresh protests from tired souls. The moon licks your stolen hair where it nestles in a distant hedge. Gray strands fraying into root-like tangles. Night folds around the grove's fresh wounds, healing already whispered in the language of cellulose and starfall. Moonlight drenches the oldest apple tree's skeleton, its split trunk gaping like petrified lightning. You kneel where roots buckle the earth, soil colder than the surrounding ground by 10 degrees. Victorian naturalists mapped these frost roots beneath ancient trees, attributing the chill to underground springs and spiteful fairies. Your knees soak up the cold through worn denim, a phantom hand squeezing marrow into winter preview. The severed branch in your grip still warms your palm, life lingering like smoke in cut green wood. Historians still argue whether druids grafted sacred oaks to apple stalks, creating hybrid temples for forbidden rites. You press the offering into the hollow, a pact sealed when the tree swallowed your grandfather's pocket watch in '63. Rot will claim this branch by March, its sugars seeping into soil already laced with rusted gears. Wind funnels through the trunk's cavity, a bassoon note stirring moths from their lichen hideouts. One lands on your thumb, translucent wings veined like medieval stained glass. 17th century monks reportedly trained Luna moths to carry prayer strips into the afterlife, certified divine couriers for a fee. Yours abandons you for the moon, leaving behind powder that smells of burnt sugar. Cold climbs your spine as shadows coalesce, the tree's canopy hoarding every scrap of darkness. You recall Norse myths of Yggdrasil's, roots gnawed by frost giants, though this trunk wears its scars with more dignity. Your boot scuffs a half-buried stone tablet, weather-worn carvings depicting dancers under boughs. Archaeologists found similar markers in Sardinia. Proof Bronze Age orchard rites involved hallucinogenic pear wine and sheep sacrifices. The branch shifts, its decaying pulp already bonding with decades of rot beneath. Your offering joins apple-scented compost, discarded limbs from '98's ice storm, wasp nests abandoned mid-sculpture, a porcelain doll head lost in the '40s harvest. Decay here isn't failure, just slow-motion alchemy turning mistakes into next April's chlorophyll. Teeth chatter as the cold breaches your sweater, the tree drinking warmth like it's the last tavern before an Arctic wasteland. You imagine Tudor farmers sharing this same shiver, their breath pluming over grafts that now feed your blisters. A root nudges your ankle, coaxing your palm against its calloused bark. Pulse meets pulse, yours frantic. The tree's a metronome set to geological time. When you rise, moss clings to your knees, green metals for surviving the shade's appetite. Your shadow stretches gaunt across the clearing, stolen by the tree to fuel some photosynthesis-era grudge. Tomorrow's buds will swell where today's cuts weep, the oldest hunger cycling on through rings and regrets. The compost gate greets you with a metallic wail, its iron hinge protesting like a disgruntled choir. Your shears answer in rusty staccato, snip snap click, as if trading barbs with the disused hardware. Carthaginian metalworkers once slathered fish oil on siege engines to mute their screams, a trick your aching ears wish you'd remembered this morning. You shoulder the gate open, its bottom hinge coughing, rust, flakes that spiral into the wind. Rotting apples carpet the path, their fermented sweetness clashing with the hinge's metallic tang. Bending to inspect the joint, your shadow merges with the gate's skeletal silhouette. You spy grooves worn by 60 winters of swinging. Medieval blacksmiths believed rust contained the trapped souls of angry apprentices. A theory these corroded threads seem keen to prove. Flakes crumble beneath your thumbnail, leaving copper stains that'll outlast tomorrow's dawn. Your oil can sits abandoned where you left it last October, still guilt-tripping you from its perch on the cider press. Condensation beads on the tin's surface, tiny lenses magnifying the engraved property of J. Appleseed, 1911. Historians still argue whether Roman aqueduct engineers deliberately induced patinas or just blamed the red stains on barbarian curses. The can's spout wheezes when squeezed, its voice matching the gate's chorus of complaints. A dribble of linseed oil hits the hinge, gold pooling in rust's creases like sap in bark. The metal inhales it greedily, your thumb working the liquid into its arthritic joint. 7th century monks allegedly chanted psalms while greasing monastery gates, their hymns syncing with squeaks to create devotional harmonies. Your efforts produce only a vulgar squelch, the sound of forgiveness earned through practical means. Wind combs through the gate's iron filigree, playing the corroded metal like a poorly tuned harmonica. You crouch to attack the lower hinge, knees popping in unison with the metal's groan. Flakes drift onto your boot, oxidized confetti, commemorating your delinquency in maintenance. 3 drops of oil create a temporary truce. The hinges moan, softening to a drowsy hum. Bees investigate the can's spout, their furred bellies glistening with stolen oil. You leave them to it. The gate won't need lubricating again until the first frost tightens its joints. Shadows stretch their amber limbs across the compost heap, yesterday's apple cores, already sprouting fungal constellations. A garter snake slips through the gate's renewed arc, its scales mimicking the hinge's old sheen. You pocket the oil can, its weight a silent reprimand against your thigh. Dusk will bring colder hands to test your repairs, hoarfrost and hungry, raccoons working in shifts. For now, the gate swings smooth enough to startle the swallows nesting in its crossbar. Their feathers whisper against iron rust, and wings trading atoms in the fading light. The garter snake's path through rust-red grass draws your eye to the peach tree's twisted trunk, its bark bulging around a fist-sized wound. Rot blooms beneath the surface, melon flesh softness swallowing your knuckle as you probe. 17th century orchardists believed trees screamed in frequencies. Only rodents could hear a theory that feels less ridiculous when your blade presses the infected wood. A bead of sap wells where steel meets pulp, the tree's protest written in amber. Your grip tightens, handle grooves matching calluses earned over 9 seasons. Egyptians once mixed fig tree resin with honey to seal royal mummies, a fact you mutter while reaching for the grafting wax. The rot smells like a forgotten lunchbox, sour sweetness clinging to your sleeve. You hesitate, knowing this cut will leave the trunk lopsided, yearning towards sunlight like a question mark. Wind rifles through the orchard's ledger of scents, damp rot, leaf mold, the cinnamon-sharp musk of your wax block. Historians still argue whether medieval topiaries were art projects or attempts to trap garden spirits in shrub form. Your shears hover, blades eclipsing the sun for a heartbeat before biting into spongy wood. The tree shudders, sending a leaf drift conspiracy skittering across your boots. Excavation becomes surgery, each slice peeling back layers of decay. You uncover beetle trails, mapping the rot's advance, their hieroglyphic paths glowing with trapped sap. 14th century peasants buried sickles at crossroads to transfer blight from crops, a ritual your rational mind mocks. As your fingers brush the tool's steel, clear air hits the wound first, oxygen's invisible flames scouring infection from raw xylem. The cavity yawns wide enough to store 3 walnuts or hold the ghosts of peaches never ripened. You daub wax along the edges, an imitation of scabbing, while bees investigate the fallen rot. Their disappointment is palpable. This carcass offers no nectar, only the grandmotherly stench of decomposition. Twilight's first moths orbit your headlamp as you step back, studying the asymmetry. Arborists in Pompeii trained vines to hide tree scars, a vanity you can't afford with winter's approach. The wound glistens, wax cooling into a glossy cataract. You press an ear to intact bark, counting 10 slow pulses of sap before the wind steals the sound. Nightshade tendrils curl around your ankle, their velveteen leaves whispering against denim. You let them stay, their poison prettier than the bare earth your work has exposed. A lone firefly blinks against the wound, mistaking wax for moonlit water, before spiraling upward into the claims of stars. Your shears click shut, the finality of a judge's gavel. The tree stands diminished, but you've seen maples thrive with hearts hollowed by lightning. Tomorrow's dew will test your wax seal. Tonight's silence already annotates the cut with cricket song footnotes. You leave the rot piled beneath a hawthorn, offering the woods a trade of spoils. The path home feels lighter, though your boot sole retains a fleck of wax glowing like fool's gold. Moths escort you past the now silent gate, their wings beating out the orchard's oldest debate, whether loss cultivates strength or merely carves spaces for different hungers to grow. You swipe sweat with a sap-stained sleeve. The moon hangs pale above like a spy hole punched through blue silk. Afternoons shouldn't have lunar audiences, yet here it floats, mute as a cathedral gargoyle, judging your pruning form. 17th century orchard manuals insisted on full moons for apple grafts, claiming lunar pull drew sap upward. You've yet to prove it, but the waxing crescent certainly watches, like an unpaid intern taking notes. Eastward branches droop under their own ambition, too many unripe plums weighing down splintered wood. Blades meet resistance, a stubborn limb croaking like a rusty gate. 17 cuts in, or is it 18? Counting surrenders to rhythm, each snap sounding clearer under the moon's cold scrutiny. Tudor gardeners buried goose skulls beneath pear trees to ward off night vapors, a tidbit you'll share later just to see eyebrows lift, the shears slip nicking your thumb. A crimson bead swells, staining the handle's worn pine. You suck the wound, tasting iron and tree resin before pressing on. Historians still argue whether Bronze Age fruit cults shaped orchards into constellations, or just got drunk on fermented quince. Above, the moon offers no verdict, only that detached babysitter stare as you reposition the ladder. Blisters bloom fresh beneath your gloves, their heat pulsing, counterpoint to the breeze. You peel one free, revealing translucent skin stretched over pink betrayal. A spider descends on silk, dangling before your face like a dare. Its shadow twins itself on the moonlit trunk, double the legs, double the menace. Not today, Shakespeare, you mutter, blowing it towards safer literary pursuits. 3 branches collapse into your arms, wood groaning like a weathered ship. Their leaves brush your neck, a sweaty itch worse than woolen long johns. You bundle the cuttings, twine biting into raw palms, and wonder if Neolithic farmers griped about blisters too. Probably misery loves its 9,000-year-old company. The moon's glow sharpens, edges hardening as sunlight fades from apricot to ash. Shadows deepen the cleft where 2 oaks lean their bark fused in a silent waltz. You carve around the join, letting their tango continue unpruned. Arborists in Edo period Japan trained maples to mimic tidal waves, a flex of control you'll never understand. This dance feels truer, unedited, messy. Wind riffles through your tool roll, fluttering the oilcloth like a surrender flag. Cold seeps through your shirt, an aggressive reminder that autumn nights bite. You tug your collar higher, fabric rasping against stubble, and eyeball the remaining row. The moon's lopsided grin says you'll finish past dark. But since when did celestial bodies pay your mortgage? A woodpecker hammers Morse code into dead elm, its staccato punctuated by distant highway moans. You pause shears midair to track the sound. Urban legends claim apple trees near highways bear sweeter fruit, courtesy of exhaust fumes. Science says pollution, romantics say rebellion. The moon stays neutral, swiping silver over your doubt. Last branch, a renegade sucker elbowing into the peach tree's canopy. You brace, boots scuffing moss, and pull. Fibers resist, then snap, sending you stumbling back into daylight's last stand. The trunk's wound weeps sap, slow as molten glass. You daub it with wax, a band-aid for arboreal oopsies, before pocketing your shears. Twilight arrives wearing mothball gray, the moon now bold against deepening blue. Your shadow stretches east, stained glass shards of leaf patterns fracturing its outline. Somewhere, an owl declares itself the night's landlord. You nod, too tired to argue, and turn toward the gate. The moon follows, peering over your shoulder like a nosy neighbor. Its light transforms the path, rutted dirt becoming liquid mercury. You half expect your boots to leave ripples. They don't, but the illusion sticks, proof that exhaustion breeds poetry. Or hallucinations. Tool shed hinges scream, a metallic yawn swallowed by crickets. You shelf the shears, their blades smeared with sap, and your own careless blood. The moon slants through a cobwebbed window, spotlighting your hydra of unfinished chores. Not tonight, you tell it, latching the door on tomorrow's burdens. Stars flicker awake as you walk home, road dust glittering like crushed ice under lunar scrutiny. Your shadow leads, stretching long enough to touch last season's storm-felled cherry. Its trunk hosts a riot of fungi, soft shelves glowing faintly in the dark. You pause, inhaling damp decay, and wonder if moonlight nourishes mushrooms differently than sun. Absurd, but so were Tudor goose skulls. The moon dips low, an overripe fruit bruising the horizon. You pocket a fallen twig, its buds clenched tight against the chill, and cross into the yellow halo of your porch light. Behind you, the orchard exhales, its breath carrying the day's final secret, that even watched trees grow wild when no one's looking. You kneel beside the storm-fallen oak, the one that cracked last winter like a dropped bell. Rot's sweet tang hangs thick, a caramelized decay that clings to your molars. Peeling back moss reveals the wound, a fist-sized hollow humming with beetle grubs. Their galleries spiral inward, perfect Fibonacci curves, lit by sunbeams piercing rotten wood. 16th century apothecaries ground beetle carapaces into dragon scale tonics. They promised visions to those brave enough to sip. You'll stick to coffee, thanks all the same. Crumbled frass dusts your palm, tiny timbers chewed to fragrant powder. A lone adult beetle patrols the labyrinth, its emerald shell catching light like stained glass. Victorian bug enthusiasts pinned live specimens to lapels as jewelry, a trend that confused both insects and dinner guests. Your splint materials weight, hemp cord, and a salvaged cedar shingle, ready to armor this breathing cathedral. Scholars still argue, do labyrinth beetles plan their tunnels, or simply obey geometry's whispered rules? The answer thrums beneath your fingers, resin already sealing the galleries, gaping mouths. Cord tightens around the shingle, a bandage holding chaos at bay. Inside, mandibles click, a sleepy protest against home renovations. You leave the lower tunnels open, rents paid in pest control and nitrogen-rich frass. Sunset gilds the fracture line, transforming rot into a kiln's molten glow. For a breath, the entire tree vibrates, a harmonium playing chords only termites hear. Wind riffles through your hair, carrying the scent of distant wood smoke. You press an ear to the trunk, listening for the colony's verdict. A single beetle crawls onto your wrist, its legs tickling like misplaced commas. It pauses, antennae quivering, before marching back toward the splint. Historians note that Mayan glyphs depict beetles rolling the sun, a metaphor you now feel in your marrow. This tiny architect's work outshines your own, its tunnels precise, where your cuts bleed guesswork. Resin hardens as shadows stretch, amber trapping the day's last light. Your knees protest when standing a chorus of pops rivaling the beetle's cadence. You step back, admiring the shingle's crude embrace around nature's clockwork. Somewhere, beneath barking dogs and highway drone, the colony resumes its sacred chewing. Tomorrow's pruning can wait. Tonight belongs to six-legged scribes rewriting decay into dwelling. The moon watches, same as ever, but you swear it leans closer this time. Moonlight turns rival branches into shadow puppets at war, their creaks sharpening to argument. You track the aggressor. A stubborn limb bullies its neighbor with each gust. Steel whispers from old leather, a blade hungry to arbitrate. 17th century orchardists grafted peace by force, violence redirecting growth amid Europe's 30 years war. You're gentler mostly. Sap beads where bark scrapes bark, a gummed boundary demanding intervention. Historians still argue whether Tudor topiary began as aristocratic whim or secret code for Catholic dissenters. You've got simpler motives. Stop the rubbing before canker claims both. A childhood memory surfaces. Granddad likening branch collisions to siblings elbowing in a wagon. His solution: trim the loudest. The offended bough bends windward, its arc splintered from decades of retreat. You notch below the bully's elbow, wood resisting like a toddler's clenched fist. One clean strike, the offender drops, releasing tension with a sigh too human. Local legend claims severed branches haunt sawmills, their groans mistaken for steam engines. Your shears spare no time for ghost stories. Exposed cambium glows lunar pale, vulnerable as a newborn's crown. You daub it with wound sealant, the smell recalling grade school paste and regret. A 1920s study swore poulticing cuts with cow dung prevented rot. You'll trust modern alchemy, thanks. Night blooming, jasmine perfumes the air, nature's consolation prize for playing surgeon. 2 yards east, last year's meddling left a lopsided maple. Now it stands corrected, proving trees forgive our mistakes faster than people. The liberated branch quivers, testing its sudden freedom from the grind. Renaissance herbalists believed trees felt pain through root networks. Science scoffs, but you apologize to the stump anyway. Friction sounds hush, only wind's breath remains. Your palm ghosts over the cut, still humming with the blade's verdict. Somewhere, Versailles, gardeners nod in their graves, approving this tiny Versailles of yours. Work-warmed blood thrums in your ears, a counter-rhythm to the orchard's restored balance. Clouds mask the moon, a mercy for both executioner and executed. Tomorrow's rain will judge your handiwork. For now, the truce holds, written in sap, and sibling branches no longer at war. Sawdust pirouettes around your boots, carried by a breeze that shouldn't exist this deep in the grove. You squint, the particles sketch phantom numerals against your toes. 30 years ago, Granddad joked that Tudor servants sprinkled sawdust and lavender on castle floors to mask chamber pot stinks. You shake your head. Modern life swapped that for endlessly vacuuming car seats. Brittle shavings cling to your laces like persistent memories as you step sideways, avoiding the largest drift. A whorl of debris spirals upward, mimicking Andromeda for 3 perfect breaths. Historians still argue whether Roman farmers read dust patterns to time spring plantings, or just blamed bad harvests on lazy augurs. Your calloused palm hovers over the vortex, counting grains like beads on an abacus. The north row demands attention. Its half-pruned silhouette mocks your progress. You swipe sweat with the back of your wrist, grit embedding itself in every crease. Egyptian embalmers once packed corpses with sawdust and myrrh, a tidbit you'll share later to horrify dinner guests. For now, it's just the itch between your shoulder blades and 83 cuts whispering your name. Steel meets wood again, the rhythm steady as a war drum. Each slice births golden motes that hover hesitant before committing to gravity. Twilight's first tendrils creep across the grass, each minute draining color from your gloves. You pause, blinking at the odd twinkle near your heel. A shaving has wedged between boot treads, catching dying light like a microscopic disco ball. Nature's prank a wink amid the grind. The chuckle surprises you, raw and genuine, as you flick it free. Fingers brush bark, grooves echoing the whorls on your own fingertips. Another snip born of muscle memory sends 7 specks aloft. They hover spelling nothing and everything before scattering into the indigoing air. Your shears slow, recognizing the oldest apple tree's shadow now stretches longer than its trunk. Blisters hum approval as you count remaining branches, each tremor in the sawdust pointing the way home. Your boot snags on something spiderweb thin, a filament bridging 2 trees. Knuckles brush soil to reveal roots finer than embroidery thread, linking trunks 5 paces apart. Medieval herbalists swore such connections let trees share warnings about droughts, though they blamed it on woodland spirits. Your shears hover, edge glinting like a judge's raised gavel. Historians still argue whether Carthaginian farmers intentionally grafted figs this way, or just stumbled into symbiotic luck. A ladybug traverses the subterranean cable, its journey spanning kingdoms. You recall 7th grade science class, Mrs. Gupta drawing chalk diagrams of fungal networks. The memory smells of pencil shavings and strawberry erasers. Wind flutters your collar as you reassess the root's path. Cutting would be lawful, prudent, even, but the trees lean toward each other like conspirators. Dutch tulip traders once paid fortunes for bulbs veined with rare patterns, nature's scribbles mistaken for divine signatures. This feels different, a collaboration deeper than human whims. Palm pressed to bark, you feel the faintest thrum through sapwood. Or maybe that's just blood pulsing in your own tired fingers. The tremor matches pace with the neighboring trunk, a clandestine metronome. Twilight softens the grove as you step back. Roots remain intact, their whisper-thin diplomacy preserved. Some alliances thrive best untouched, like Byzantine merchants trading secrets through hollowed-out melons. Metal slides into leather as shadows claim the orchard. The severed branches will kindle fires elsewhere, but these hidden threads keep weaving their quiet accord. Behind you, a single apple detaches. It falls not with a thud, but the softest click against earth. Your blade bites upward, 45 degrees exact, leaving a wound that won't trap rain. The cut weeps slow amber, a language older than cuneiform. You angle each slice like punctuation, commands asking the tree where to push next spring's hunger. Roman orchards used lead strips to guide branch growth. Archaeologists found one still cinching a fossilized trunk in Pompeii. Your shears feel kinder, steel whispering suggestions instead of metal demands. A bead of sap drags down your wrist, erratic as a drunk calligrapher's ink blot. You pause at a gnarled junction, two limbs wrestling for the same sunlight. 17th century monks wrote of trees repenting bad growth. After proper pruning, their journals smell of incense and walnut ink. Your thumb rubs a scar from last year's correction. The bark has swallowed your mistake whole. Half-rotten apples litter the ground, their brown flesh fermenting into next season's temptation for deer. Historians still argue whether Egyptian fig growers intentionally trained vines into living ladders, or just laziness masquerading as genius. You snap a brittle twig, its crack echoing through the grove like a snapped violin string. Moonlight glazes your latest incision. The angle mirrors the slope of nearby hills. There's a village tale about a pear tree that bled when cut, said to be a printer's ghost trapped in sap. You doubt it, but still whisper sorry to the quivering cambium. 3 crows roost above their heads, tucked like black commas, punctuating the dusk. Each pruning scar becomes a knotty ellipsis, the tree's way of pausing to gather strength. You notch a Shinto-style offering branch, folded over itself in a woody prayer. Night insects hum as you oil the shears. Their song syncs with the rhythmic scrape of cloth on metal. Tomorrow's growth already stirs beneath the bark, cells plotting their green rebellion. The orchard thrums with edits, your cuts mere footnotes in a story that outlives your hands. A moth lands on your forearm, wings dusted with pollen from some midnight bloom. You blow it gently toward the nearest scar, let it carry the message forward. Blossoms will decipher your blade's intent come April, translating violence into sugar. The frayed rope sways its last strands, weeping fibers into the breeze. You steady the bent limb beneath its curve, memorized by decades of pushing feet. Rusty eye hooks still grip the bark. Medieval European children used similar iron rings for apple swings during harvest feasts. Your shears hover. The branch groans like a parent, remembering piggyback rides. 3 quick cuts. The limb drops without ceremony. No laughter follows, just crows mimicking the ghost of a giggle. The Greeks strung up the first swings for Dionysian festivals, drunken revelers kicking at stars between fruit trees. You pocket a splintered eye hook, its patina worn smooth by small hands, now buried or bakeries or battlefields. The scarred bark reveals hollows, perfect thumbprints where kids gripped before flight. Victorian gardeners believed a swing's shadow fertilized roots. Below plant manuals debated optimum dangling heights. You press a palm to the wound. Sap beads up like apology tears. Wind threads through the remaining branches, a substitute swing song. Historians still argue whether those Neolithic rope marks on oak bones were playgrounds or prayer devices. You rake leaf litter from the tree's base, uncovering marbles and arrowheads fused by rust and time. The trunk's curve relaxes, no longer playing Atlas to summers past. You whistle through your teeth, a poor imitation of those lost squeals. Tomorrow's rain will soften the scar key's rust on skeletal branches, can't unlock what memories choose to keep. The oak's crook cradles your shoulder, a groove worn smooth by seasons of accidental collaboration. You shift, wait slowly, bark textures map themselves against your spine like braille. 17th century orchardists grafted entire roofs from living branches, their chapels held up by patient arboreal arms. A splinter pricks your palm, nature's tiny signature on the unspoken contract. You inhale pine sap and the faint tang of iron. Someone once tethered a weather vane here. Ants march through the crack, their highway detoured by your presence. Legends claim a mad clockmaker buried his gears beneath this very tree. Villagers swore roots chimed on foggy mornings. The trunk bears your imprint now, a temporary tattoo of trust pressed into lignum vitae. Lean harder, the wood answers with a chorus of creaks. Old growth tightens its grip, cellulose fibers interlocking like ancient chainmail. Historians still debate whether druids decoded messages in resin swirls or just enjoyed the sticky aesthetics. Your elbow brushes a burl, its tumorous shape cradling a warped arrowhead from who knows when. Sunlight filters through quarantine tags from 2 blights ago. Plastic ribbons faded to ghostly pink. You count breaths, 19 before easing back. The tree sways upright, its sigh scattering ladybugs from fractured bark. Ottoman garden manuals advised whispering secrets to figs, claiming shared burdens lightened a plant's load. Your palm lingers, ridged patterns linger like fingerprints in reverse. Somewhere beneath, roots nurse shattered clock cogs and Civil War mini A-balls. The crowbar's weight on your belt feels suddenly redundant. Wind riffles through leaves, an arboreal handshake sealing the deal. Shadows seep between pear trunks like spilled ink. Your blistered hands hover over the day's amputations. 76 cuttings coil at your feet, crooked apostrophes punctuating the orchard's silent lecture. Cortes, men wrote home about Aztec nurseries, each sapling wrapped in heated cloth against mountain chills. You snap a twig, its green marrow still pulsing, and wonder if Moctezuma's gardeners felt this same reluctant pride. Dusk bleeds the color from your tally marks notches on a maple branch older than the Brooklyn Bridge. A moth lands on your wrist, translucent wings fanning the day's last heat against your skin. 16th century herbalists believed pruned apple wood could ward off barn fires, though their recipes never specified which cuts worked best. You sweep sawdust into a crescent mound, the remains glittering like powdered bone in the failing light. 1 pile for kindling, 1 for trellis stakes. 3 twigs sticky with sap get tucked into your pocket, emergency torches for October's cider nights. Historians still argue whether colonial orchards inspired the first picket fences or just borrowed the idea from sheep pens. Your boot nudges a gnarled limb, its arthritis-shaped curve perfect for hooking down rogue persimmons. The air thickens with wing beats, starlings trading shift, reports above the compost heap. Your shears hang slack, their reflection in the watering trough shows a blade nibbled by 10,000 cuts. 17th century monks buried pear clippings under honey jars, claiming it sweetened next year's harvest. You never tried it. The risk of attracting bears outweighs poetic whimsy. Breezes riffle through your tally stick, 6970. The count wobbles as shadows eat the numbers. A splintered branch near the bottom oozes amber, its resin smells of long summers and unkept promises. Forestry ledgers from Versailles reveal Louis XIV's gardeners disposed of 4 million rose cuttings annually, all while the Sun King complained about thorns. Your 76 feel triumphantly modest. You kneel to restack the pile, fingers avoiding the still weeping wounds. Ants surge over a twig's split end, their antennae quivering at the sudden bounty. Some hedge witches swore tying apple cuttings with red thread could delay first frosts, a superstition your granddad called cross-stitched climate science. The remaining light clings to your nails, 8 crescents of orange smeared with chlorophyll. North wind unspools the day's heat, your sweat cools into a second skin. The tallest cutting leans like the Tower of Pisa, defying gravity through sheer botanical stubbornness. Botanists once grafted pear branches onto hawthorn roots, hoping for spineless trees. They got fruit that tasted of grudges. Your own grafts fared better, though the memory of splintered scalpels still aches in your knuckles. Owl light now, each snip site on the trees glows faintly, arboreal phosphorus activated by blade kisses. 6 cuttings escape the pile rolled downhill by some mischief-minded breeze. You let them go. Tudor farmers left autumn prunings as offerings to orchard imps, a tradition you follow ironically, mostly. Pocketing your shears, you pause. The remaining branches form a shape, something between a crown and a cage. Count again. 76 becomes 73, then 81, the absurdity curving your mouth. Night embraces the mathematical lie. Final inventory, 1 orchard keeper, 6 blisters, infinite shadows. The numbers never mattered, only the empty spaces where your shears said no, so the trees could whisper yes. The final branch waits, a gnarled veteran refusing to bend even as its leaves yellow. Your shears caress the joint where wood thickens into stubbornness, a knot older than your great aunt's grudges. 16th century shipwrights prized such twists for hull ribs, their natural curves outlasting straight-cut beams. You position the blades where bark wrinkles like a frown, knowing this cut will echo in your shoulder for days. Resin beads on the wound before you even apply pressure. The tree's last plea. 17th century Essex wives burned the season's final pruning to ward off woodworm devils, smoke shaping protective runes. Your grip tightens, metal bites. The crack splits the twilight, a sound felt more in molars than eardrums. Split wood reveals rings counting droughts, 18 summers marked by thirsty gaps. One wide band glistens oddly, sap crystallized during the year without winter. Historians still argue whether Tudor orchards fruited twice that anomalous season, or if chroniclers exaggerated harvest records. You wipe amber strands from the blade. They cling like spider silk, charged with static. The severed branch lies heavy, a fallen titan amidst its slender brethren. It smells of thunderstorms trapped in cellulose, aged tannins sharpening the air. French coopers once paid double for wood cured by lightning strikes, claimed it made barrels sing. This one won't hold wine. It'll feed a farmhouse fireplace 10 miles west, where a blacksmith's daughter sketches trees that never shed. Pneumatic ants evacuate their shattered galleries, some carrying larvae like pale commas. Your fingernail traces the severed end, rough furrows, where steel overcame grain. Medieval laws fined peasants for gathering fallen wood, yet royal foresters collected crown prunings to burn witches. You heave the branch onto your shoulder, its weight familiar as a sleeping child. Twilight birds heckle from the hedges. The load shifts, bark snagging your shirt, leaving a tattoo of scratches. 83 steps to the timber cart, each footfall sinking with remembered advice. Let the wood choose its purpose. Your mentor rasped his hands, cradling a plum bough bound for a cooper's lathe. You lower the branch into the cart's crescent belly, its impact stirring oak leaves from last week's work. A splinter embeds itself in your thumb, the tree's final commentary. Bulgarian folklore claims applewood splinters grant visions of lost orchards, but you'll settle for tweezers and bourbon. The cart's rusted axle creaks, an old protest. Your palm rests on the bark, still vibrating with the day's severances. Dutch still life painters once paid extra for gnarled cuttings, their twists symbolizing life's contrived chaos. Tomorrow's buyer will see only BTU potential, never the calculus of sunlight versus symmetry. Moth wings brush your neck, drawn to salt trails drying on skin. You murmur the same words spoken over first cuttings at dawn, a nonsense benediction, mixing Latin plant names and baseball stats. The branch accepts this ritual, its splinters already softening in the dark. Night fills the space where wood once blocked the stars. Somewhere west, beyond hills and highway, an anvil will chant its own pyre hymn come December. Your empty hands hang lighter now, less gardeners, more ghosts. You turn homeward, the cart's shadow stretching into something like forgiveness. Blistered palms guide the cart through gate groans, its rusted hinge, now part of the orchard's nightly lament. You relatch the sagging bolt. 17th century gardeners believed ironwork deserved bedtime prayers. a superstition scribbled in marginalia by bored apprentices. Oilcloth unfurls across the cart bed, its waxed surface inhaling the day's last warmth. Each tool gets the three-step ritual wipe: inspect, sheath. The pruning saw's teeth gleam like a wolf's smile, still hungry despite gorging on 76 branches. Renaissance surgeons borrowed such serrated blades for bone work, their precision perfected in orchards before anatomy theaters. You tuck it beside the loppers, their spring mechanism, sighing like an old man sinking into a bath. Stars pierce the indigo curtain Pleiades first, sharp as cider vinegar. Medieval cider pressers timed harvests by these fermenting sisters, claimed their alignment soured batches. If ignored, your neck cricks upward, constellations blur behind a veil of own breath steam. Someone should bottle that exhaustion. Victorian letter writers called night air tonic for moral decay. Between sips of opium-laced claret, gloves curl inward on the wall hook, fingers petrified in half grips. A spider claims the thumb hollow, her silk already mapping fresh architecture. You kick clods from boot treads. 19th century pest controllers paid children to collect apple pests, 10 aphids per farthing. Dirt showers contain entire civilizations, might kingdoms overthrown with each stomp. The path home wears its nightly pelt of frost, crunch symphony beneath your soles. 17 steps from gate stoop to stone well, you've memorized each hexagonal paver's tilt. Your shadow stretches east, a lean giant clutching an invisible sheaf. Renaissance artists called such elongations soul measurements, believed twilight shadows revealed one's moral density. Yours looks positively anorexic. Wind rifles through your pockets, stealing a handkerchief embroidered with someone else's initials. Let it fly. 18th century laundry maids used lost linens for love divination. The fabric snags a hawthorn, flag of surrender against the dark. Your lungs pull air, sweetened by decomposing pears, fruit surrendering to rot's alchemy. Historians still argue whether medieval perfumers intentionally replicated decay scent or just lacked decent florals. A farmhouse window glows amber. Your reflection approaches in the glass like a phantom. Fingers leave smudge maps on the sill. Newton's childhood orchard bore similar fingerprints beneath his telescope smudges. The door yields its oaken yawn, scattering 3 moths trained on lamplight. Your boot heels echo across flagstones, not a sound, but the memory of sound. The hearth swallows your offering, one splintered branch atop yesterday's ash. Kindling crackles its gratitude. Flames birth shadow puppets, battling crows and sickle-wielding giants. Etruscan priests once read fire dances to predict harvests, their scrolls lost to cookfires like this. You sip mint steeped in a chipped teapot, its handle soldered 7 times since the Blitz. Crickets resume their symposium beneath floorboards. Somewhere past midnight, the orchard's exhale will fog your window, a whispered receipt for today's scars. Threadbare socks whisper across floorboard canyons, their weave slack from 43 washings. Byzantines slept in tree socks woven from mulberry bark, a supposed guard against gout. You counter with Bourbon America's fruitier contribution to joint preservation. Your wristwatch ticks face down on the nightstand, allergic to moonlight's judgment. The mattress accepts your weight like soil, embracing a seed, covers tangle, a half Nelson hold perfected over decades. Before dawn, you'll dream of branches plotting their regrowth, conspiracy theories whispered in xylem codes. Carthaginian farmers grafted nightmares onto olive trees if Pliny's gossip holds truth. The last candle drowns in its wax, a self-inflicted burial. Darkness thickens. Breath slows. Somewhere between starlight and memory, a blistered palm brushes a dormant root keeper and kept sharing the same ache. The house creaks, its timber ribcage expanding with the grove's distant breath. Sleep comes not a guest, a truce. Blistered palms guide the cart through gate groans, its rusted hinge now part of the orchard's nightly lament. You relatch the sagging bolt. 17th century gardeners believed ironwork deserved bedtime prayers, a superstition scribbled in margins by bored apprentices. Oilcloth unfurls across the cart bed, its waxed surface inhaling the day's last warmth. Each tool gets the 3-step ritual wipe. Inspect, sheath. The pruning saw's teeth gleam like a wolf's smile, still hungry despite gorging on 76 branches. Renaissance healers borrowed such serrated blades for bone work, their precision perfected in orchards first. You tuck it beside the loppers, their spring sighing like an old man sinking into a bath. Stars pierce the indigo curtain Pleiades first, sharp as cider vinegar. Medieval cider makers timed harvests by these fermenting sisters, claimed their alignment, soured batches, if ignored. Your neck cricks upward, constellations blur behind a veil of breath steam. Someone should bottle that exhaustion. Victorian writers called night air tonic for moral decay, sipping claret between drafts. Gloves curl inward on the wall hook, fingers frozen in half grips. A spider claims the thumb hollow, her silk already mapping fresh roads. You kick clods from boot treads. 19th century pest controllers paid children 10 aphids per farthing to collect apple pests. Dirt showers hold might kingdoms, overthrown with each stomp. The path home wears its nightly frost pelt, crunch symphony beneath your soles. 17 steps from gate stoop to stone well, you've memorized each paver's tilt. Your shadow stretches east, a lean giant clutching nothing. Renaissance artists called such stretches spirit measures, believed shadows revealed moral weight. Yours looks featherlight. Wind rifles through your pockets, stealing a handkerchief stitched with forgotten initials. Let it fly. 18th century maids used lost linens for love charms. The fabric snags a hawthorn, white flag against the dark. Your lungs pull air, sweetened by rotting pears, fruit becoming earth again. Historians argue whether old perfumers copied decay scents or just cherished what lingered. A farmhouse window glows amber. Your reflection approaches like a haze. Fingers leave smears. On the sill, Newton's orchard bore similar marks below telescope smudges. The door yawns, scattering 3 moths schooled in lamplight. Boot heels echo across flagstones, not sound, but its ghost. The hearth swallows your offering, one splintered branch atop yesterday's ash. Kindling crackles thanks. Flames birth shadow puppets, crows dueling sickle giants. Etruscan priests red fire dances for harvest signs, their secrets lost to humble cookfires. You sip mint from a Blitzmendied teapot, 7 solder scars on its handle. Crickets hum beneath floorboards. Somewhere past midnight, the orchard's breath will fog your window. A whispered receipt for today's toil. Threadbare socks whisper across floorboard valleys, weary from 43 washings. Byzantines slept in bark socks to ward off gout. You choose bourbon, sweeter preservation. Your wristwatch hides from moonlight, ticking facestone on the nightstand. The mattress accepts you like soil, welcoming a seed. Covers twist, a half-hold learned over decades. Before dawn, you'll dream of branches conspiring in xylem tongues. Ancient farmers grafted nightmares onto trees. If old tales hold truth, the last candle drowns in wax, a soft surrender. Darkness swells. Breath unwinds. Somewhere between stars and memory, a blistered palm brushes a sleeping root. Keeper and kept share the same quiet ache. The house sighs timber ribs, expanding with the grove's distant breath. Sleep comes not a guest, a truce.